My name is Ethan Giovanni Sandor McDonnell, but it wasn't always. I was born Ethan Giovanni McDonnell, but we'll get into how I picked up an extra name along the way. I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania on May 31st, 1993. My mom was single and pretty young at the time. She was as old as I am today. Since I only had one parent at the time, my mom had complete creative control over my name, and she named me after the book Ethan Frome. From the time I got home from the hospital, I had a penchant for mischief that would sometimes land me in trouble, but my curiosity ultimately helped me develop as a toddler. There weren't any other kids on our block, so I quickly learned to entertain people much older than me. Some of my favorite memories of learning to talk were the hours I spent down the street at Mr. Barnhart's house, chatting with him about my day. As I grew a little older, my uncle taught me how to play Super Mario Bros. On the NES, and he even taught me a couple of choice words to use when I would die in Super Mario Bros. My first few years of life spent living with my mom's family are definitely memories I'll cherish forever. When I was around 2.5 years old, my mom started dating Tom, a guy from New Jersey who seemed to enjoy my existence. He endeared himself to me with some foam bath soap, and I quickly accepted him into my tribe. My mom married Tom when I was 3, and he's the only dad I've ever known. He legally adopted me shortly after the wedding, and that's when I decided to add Sandor to my name. Fast forward a few years, I'm now an adolescent whose favorite thing to do is play soccer. We've moved to the suburbs, and I now have 2 younger brothers, Owen and Aiden. The other big change is there are now plenty of kids my age to hang out with, and that's where the fun really began. I consider my childhood to have been pretty idyllic. Summer camp, soccer tournaments, neighborhood-wide bouts of capture the flag, snow football, the community pool, and a candy store that still sold penny fish by the brown paper bag. It was awesome. But it was tinged with a bit of an existential dread. I've always been acutely aware of my own mortality. I'll explain. When my youngest brother, Aiden, was 4 years old, he was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. None of us had any idea what that meant, but we certainly learned in a hurry. DMD is the #1 genetic killer of boys worldwide, and there is currently no cure. Aiden has lived most of his life with the ability to walk, but when he was 11, he lost that ability. His wheelchair has become part of his identity, but it doesn't define him, and honestly, he is one of the funniest people I know. His diagnosis changed the way I view the world, and made me a lot more compassionate than I would otherwise be. That compassion fueled an early love for politics. I see politics as a way to help people on a grand scale. As a freshman in high school, I was obsessed with the speeches of then-Senator Barack Obama. I immediately started volunteering every day after school for his campaign. Now, as a 14-year-old, knocking on doors and calling strangers on the phone to find out who they're voting for, it was a little intimidating at first. But the people I met through the campaign inspired me to keep at it. During this time, I was also transitioning my interest in sports to a new outlet, which was coaching Special Olympics. Bad coaches and a broken hip ultimately drove me from organized sports around this time. But as high school continued, my interest in politics would continue to shape who I was, and when it was time to head off to college, that is what I chose to study. My time in college was defined by ups and downs. This was the first time that any mental health issues started to inhibit my day-to-day life. One semester, I missed the majority of my classes and spent most of my time in bed. That was definitely a low point, and I was lucky to have professors who worked with me to stop my grades from tanking. In contrast to that, I also had some of the best times of my life in college. I made lifelong friends, learned how to think properly, and forged an independence. It was during that time that I met Julia. As a graduating senior, I wasn't exactly looking for a relationship at college. But Julia was really eccentric and funny in a way I hadn't really experienced before. After a couple dates, it was clear we were stuck with each other, and we would spend the remainder of my senior year getting to know each other and exploring the area around school. After I graduated, I immediately went north to New Hampshire and volunteered on the Bernie Sanders campaign. This experience reaffirmed what I already knew, that people who work on campaigns are literally the best people you can ever meet. My time in New Hampshire made me feel like campaigns are what I should be doing with my life, so when I got back to Pennsylvania, I applied and was hired to work for the DNC. However, a couple weeks working in the bureaucracy really crushed me, and I was still pretty sore over the Bernie Sanders situation, so I quit. It was a really hard decision, and it left me with few options to work in politics in the short term. I decided instead to take the first full-time office job I could find and save some money while Julia finished her degree. However, the complacency that is bred from working in an office left my creative side feeling very underfed. One day, while watching Julia work in Photoshop for a class, I decided that I really wanted to give my all to a creative outlet, and I was intrigued by the thought of YouTube. The idea that creators could immediately connect with an audience and a community without any filters or red tape was amazing to me, and I decided to save up some gear to start practicing. I had absolutely no editing or filming experience, so I shot some practice vlogs that didn't make me very happy when I was finished with them. But at a certain point, I started to see progress, and the moment I was done creating a video that satisfied me, I uploaded it and launched this channel. The feeling was amazing, and the sense of community on YouTube is so cool. I can't wait to see what the future holds, and I really look forward to getting to know each other better.